In a small, ancient village nestled between rugged mountains and green valleys, a family struggled to stay whole amidst the chaos of war. The streets that once echoed with laughter and bustling vendors now lay silent, filled only with dust and sorrow. For the Myers family, hope was the only force stronger than fear. Clara, a resilient woman with eyes that had seen too much, gathered her children close as bombs thundered in the distance. She had 3 children, Ethan, the eldest at 15, whose courage seemed beyond his years, Lila, 12, who dreamed of becoming a writer and whispered stories into her brother's ear each night, and Noah, only 7, whose laughter was a rare but cherished sound in their home. Their father, Samuel, had left nearly a year ago to defend their village, but he hadn't returned. Still, each night, Clara left the door unlocked and placed a small lantern in the window. "He'll find his way back," she would whisper, as much for herself as for her children. "As long as there's light, he'll know we're waiting." One day, as they huddled together in their dimly lit room, a quiet knock came at the door. Clara's heart raced, her hands trembling as she reached for the latch. When she opened it, her breath caught. Standing before her was a soldier, weary and cloaked in mud. But his eyes, those familiar dark eyes, sparked with recognition. It was Samuel. The children clung to him, but Samuel's embrace was heavy, as though he were anchoring himself to them. He had come home, but not without scars. The silence he carried spoke volumes. Over the following weeks, he would sit by the window, gazing at the mountains, the place where he had seen friends fall, narrowly escaped death, and made a promise to himself: if he returned, he would protect his family at any cost. As winter approached, resources grew scarce. Samuel decided they had to leave the village to keep his family safe. Though the thought terrified them, he assured them it was their only hope. Ethan was instructed to pack lightly but practically, a few blankets, dried food, and a small book Lila loved, filled with poems that brought her comfort. Little Noah, not understanding the gravity of their journey, clutched his worn teddy bear, determined to keep it safe. They set off under the cover of night, their footsteps nearly silent against the gravel path. Samuel led the way, navigating hidden trails he had memorized during his time in the mountains. Their destination, the border of a neighboring country, a place rumored to be safe, where other families had found refuge. Days turned into nights, each step growing heavier as fatigue and hunger gnawed at them. But Clara reminded them of their inner strength. She shared stories of her own parents' resilience, how they had once fled hardship to build a life in this very village. "We come from strong roots," she told them, "and we will grow again, no matter where we are planted." On the 5th night, as they prepared to rest, they heard distant voices, soft but unmistakable. Another family appeared, just as weary, their eyes hollow with exhaustion. They joined forces, sharing stories, food, and an unspoken bond formed by people who had lost everything but hope. One evening, as they sat around a small fire, Ethan asked his father, "What if we never make it? What if the war follows us?" Samuel paused, choosing his words carefully. "The war is around us, son, but it's not within us. As long as we have hope, we have something no one can take away." At dawn on the 7th day of their journey, they reached the edge of a wide river that marked the border. It was heavily guarded, but Samuel had a plan. In the quiet of dawn, they waited for the guards to change shifts and slipped across in small groups, clinging to each other's hands as they waded through the icy water. When they finally set foot on the other side, a rush of relief and disbelief washed over them. They had made it. But their journey was far from over. They still faced the daunting task of building a life in an unfamiliar land. Yet, for the first time in months, they were safe, together, and free. As they walked toward the distant refugee camp, Clara turned to her children and, for the first time in months, allowed herself to smile. This journey, born of despair, had ended with hope, a hope that would be the foundation of their new life. As the Myers family made their way to the refugee camp, they were welcomed by volunteers and other families who had endured similar struggles. The camp was filled with tents, some makeshift, some sturdy, all bearing the marks of a transient home. The children stared wide-eyed at the bustling scene, a community of survivors, people from all walks of life bound by loss and resilience. Inside their tent, Clara unpacked what few belongings they had. She spread their worn blankets over thin mattresses and gave each child a reassuring hug. Despite their exhaustion, they clung to the small comforts they'd brought with them: Lila's poetry book, Noah's teddy bear, and a single photograph of their family from happier days. In the days that followed, Samuel found work in the camp, helping with construction and organizing supplies. He rarely spoke of the things he'd seen, but he would occasionally catch Clara's eye in quiet moments, a silent reminder of the gratitude they felt just to be alive, together. Slowly, the spark returned to his eyes. Ethan, restless and eager to help, spent his days volunteering in the camp's small school, helping other children learn basic math and reading. Lila, too, found her place there, using her love of storytelling to calm the younger children, weaving tales of brave heroes and enchanted forests that transported them, if only for a while, away from the harshness of their reality. One evening, as they sat around a fire shared by several families, an elderly man began to play a haunting tune on a weathered flute. The melody was soft, but it carried a power that silenced the crowd. Lila listened intently, captivated, while Noah nestled against Clara, lulled by the music. Afterward, the old man approached them, extending the flute toward Lila. "Take it," he whispered. "Pass on the music, pass on the stories." Lila accepted the flute, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. That night, she whispered to Ethan, "One day, I'll tell the story of this journey, of how we found hope in the darkest of times." Months passed, and the family began to find a new rhythm. Samuel managed to secure a spot as a laborer outside the camp, and Clara took up sewing, repairing clothes for other refugees. Though they lived in uncertainty, the family felt a sense of purpose and even joy, a feeling that had once seemed impossible. Eventually, news came that they could apply for resettlement in a new country, a place where they could finally build a life away from the shadows of war. It would take time and patience, but it was a promise of a fresh start. On the day they received their approval for resettlement, Clara gathered her family outside their tent. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden light across the camp. She held each child close, feeling a swell of pride. They had faced unimaginable challenges, yet here they stood, stronger, together, and ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. As they packed their belongings once again, this time with the promise of a permanent home, Lila placed the flute carefully on top of her small stack of treasures. She knew she would bring it with her wherever they went, a symbol of the family's resilience and the hope they'd kept alive. When they finally left the camp, walking toward a bus that would take them to a new land, Clara looked back at the makeshift village that had been their refuge. Tears filled her eyes, not of sorrow, but of gratitude. They were leaving with something far more precious than they had arrived with, the knowledge that, no matter what lay ahead, they would face it together, bound by hope, love, and the strength of their shared story. As the Myers family boarded the bus that would carry them toward a new beginning, they held each other close, watching the camp disappear into the distance. Though they were leaving behind a temporary home and the friends they had made, they knew they were taking something far more lasting, a renewed sense of hope. In the months that followed, they settled into a new country, adjusting to unfamiliar streets and a different language. Samuel found work, Clara continued to sew, and the children returned to school, slowly piecing together a life they once thought they'd lost. One evening, as they sat around their small kitchen table, Lila brought out the old flute. She played the melody she had learned at the camp, filling their new home with a sound that carried their past, their journey, and their resilience. In that moment, they realized they had finally found peace, a place where their story could continue, woven together by love and hope.